10 Sinister cruise ship secrets exposed, spine-chilling tales of cursed voyages and haunted decks. The moment Jim stepped aboard the SS Liberty, a chill clawed down his spine. It was meant to be the vacation of a lifetime, but the moment they crossed the threshold, he couldn't shake the feeling that the festive atmosphere surrounding them, a cacophony of laughter, vibrant colors, and the tantalizing aroma of fresh seafood, was a thin veil hiding something terrible. The whispers among the crew danced in his ears like ominous echoes. This ship had secrets, dark ones. On the first night, the ship erupted in celebration. Bright lights illuminated the decks, and the joviality of fellow cruisers filled the air. But hidden beneath this facade, shadows flitted at the corners of Jim's vision, fleeting glimpses of figures too shadowy and sharp to be real. The laughter was too distant, almost otherworldly. As Jim cheered alongside Megan and 10-year-old Lily, gripping a red balloon tighter than his sanity, an unsettling thought crept into his mind. What if nothing was as it seemed? Then the show started. Lily, wide-eyed with wonder, dashed towards a dazzling puppet performance. In a heartbeat, she vanished into the crowd. His heart pounded as he turned, scanning for her familiar face in an ocean of strangers. Panic surged through him as Megan's frantic pleas drummed against his ears. Jim, where is she? And with every tick of the clock, a cold sweat drenched his brow. People milled about, wearing those forced smiles that felt like a mask over a grim reality. Frantic inquiries turned up nothing. A crew member would glance back, their eyes betraying something deeper, something terrifying. Jim's mind raced. They were playing a cruel game. Then he spotted Clara, the cleaning lady. She grabbed his arm and pulled him aside, her voice a low, harsh whisper. This ship has a history. Accidents, they say the souls never left. You need to leave. Suddenly, whispers echoed around them from the crowd, snippets of conversation that sent icy fingers crawling up Jim's spine. Tonight's the night. The ritual must be completed, a passenger said, while another nodded eagerly. Jim felt the weight of reality close in, their vacation transforming into a sinister trap. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every minute felt heavier. The cheers outside turned into urgent cries as Jim realized he was racing against time, not just for Lily, but against an insidious force that had woven itself into the very fabric of the SS Liberty. Crew members brushed past him, smiles like masks painted with fear. In that moment, he knew they weren't just passengers, they were players in an unseen game of life and death, while Lily's laughter echoed hauntingly in his mind. As he strained to hear through the pulsing chaos, a distant wail pierced the air, mingling with the crashing waves, an unholy melody that promised vengeance for those lost beneath the surface. At the edge of the crowd, Jim stared into a whirlpool of masked faces, uncertain who was friend or foe. He braced himself, sensing the clock tick toward doom, each second tightening its grip on his throat. If he didn't find Lily soon, he knew they'd all be swallowed by the darkness of the night, joining the whispers of the lost forever. Would he be able to unearth the truth before the tide closed in around them? The frantic search felt endless. Jim's footsteps pounded like thunder against the ship's polished decks, each step fueled by adrenaline and terror. He could practically hear his heart pounding in his ears drown out the jubilant celebrations that morphed into something sinister. The tightness in his chest was suffocating. Desperation clawed at his throat, and just as he was about to scream, the familiar tinkle of laughter broke through the chaos. Lily's laughter. He spun around, eyes darting in every direction. Lily! He shouted, a plea echoing through the throng. He caught sight of a flash of red, the balloon just like the one Lily had been clutching. But it wasn't her small hand gripping it. Instead, a shadowy figure, barely more than a child-sized silhouette, held it against the backdrop of flickering lights, faceless and unnervingly still. Jim, over here. Megan's voice cut through the panic. She stood near the edge of the deck, her face pale, panic etched into her features as she pointed toward a group of passengers gathered too closely together. He ran to her, instincts honed to a razor's edge. "Did you see her?" he gasped, barely able to form the words. Megan shook her head, eyes wide. "But they're talking about something. The crowd, it feels wrong." Rounding the gathering crowd, Jim's eyes drank in the sight, men and women swaying, entranced, their murmurs blending with the crashing waves. The air pulsed with urgency and dread, the sinister lyrics from some dark, forgotten chant filling the spaces between breaths. Each face was an echo of despair, twisted in fear or glee. Jim couldn't tell which. "Get away from here. This isn't right," he shouted, trying to shake them from their stupor. But the shadows seemed to absorb his voice, reducing it to a whisper lost amid the growing crescendo. Then, like a sudden tidal wave, one figure broke from the throng. A crew member, his eyes wild, stumbled into Jim. "They're coming for her. You need to save her." "Who? Who is coming?" "The spirits. They demand tribute." He looked back toward the group, and in that moment, one expression stood out among the other haunted faces. There was Clara, the cleaning lady. She watched him with a look of grave empathy, as if sharing a profound and terrible secret. Just behind her, a ripple coursed through the crowd, and then Lily's bright hair appeared, fear painted across her small features. "Daddy!" she cried out, just as the chanting grew frenzied. "Help me!" Jim's heart shattered as he lunged through the throng, squeezing past limbs that felt like iron chains, bolstered by a primal urge to reach his daughter. All the while, a knot of dread twisted within him. Thoughts circled like sharks. This was no ordinary crowd. They were veils of spirits intertwined with the flesh, both corporeal and ethereal. As he finally broke free, hands grasping Lily tightly, the maniacal chants erupted into anguished screams. The air turned electric with menace. Shadows elongated, stretching across the deck, and Jim felt the temperature plummet. "Do you understand, Jim?" Clara's voice suddenly sliced through the frenzy. "To spare Lily, you must give up something precious, something from the heart." The weight of her words crashed upon him like a storm. Panic rose within him. He had to make a choice. He could feel the force drawing closer, the unseen hand of fate creeping in, but what could he possibly sacrifice to save his daughter? As the wails intensified and the deck trembled beneath his feet, Jim felt the darkness closing in, not just around them, but within him. Would he be strong enough to make that choice? The whispers grew louder, swirling around him, suffocating him with urgency. There was no time, every second a countdown. Just when he thought he might scream, the ballroom doors swung open, revealing a sight far worse than he imagined. A shadowy figure, robed, standing in the doorway, its voice a chilling whisper, "The ritual begins now." How could he possibly escape this fate? And what awaited him beyond those doors, behind the facade of haunting merriment? The figure in the doorway loomed larger than Jim had anticipated, shrouded in swirling darkness. Its robe seemed woven from shadows, swallowing the dim light from the party behind. Jim's breath hitched as the figure raised a skeletal hand and pointed directly at him, beckoning with a voice that sounded like crushed glass. "Come forth, child of the living." The words slithered through the air, curling around him like fog. Panic surged in Jim's veins as he sensed the crowd, once wild with celebration, quieting, their eyes now fixed intensely on him and the dreaded figure. "Daddy, help me." Lily's voice broke through the heavy silence, punctuated by her terrified expression. A spark of clarity flickered within Jim, igniting a fierce protective instinct. "Hold on, Lily. I'm coming," he yelled, pushing past the grasp of cold shadows that sought to ensnare him. Shoving through the throng, the chanting began once more, but this time more insistent, louder. The air thickened, crackling with foreboding. Jim could feel his heart race, every beat urging him onward, propelling him through the crowd that seemed to ripple like a living organism. "Jim the sacrifice," Clara's voice echoed, her distress radiating from the edge of the mass. "It must be made willingly. Offer your heart." The very idea sent ice coursing through his limbs. What did it mean? A bargain with the unknown. He glanced back at Clara, searching for a hint of reassurance in her features, but all he saw was despair. Just as rapidly, he turned back to Lily, now within his reach, her small hands outstretched, pleading that he collided with a wall of bodies, all swaying, as if they were puppets under the control of an unseen puppeteer. Jim pushed his way through, finding himself on the brink of a dark abyss where the figure awaited him, motionless yet commanding. No! Get away from him! A voice cried, cutting through the eerie calm. Megan appeared, a wild look in her eyes, clawing her way through the throng, always a step behind Jim. You can't trust it. Jim felt a coldness engulf him. The shadowy figure took a step closer, the air pulsing with its presence, making his heart race faster. This child deserves to live. But what are you willing to part with? The chilling question hit Jim with the weight of a lead anchor. What could he give up to ensure Lily's safety? His own life? A piece of himself? He thought of the love that forged their bond. How could he sacrifice the essence of his heart? In that moment, the chanting crescendoed into a frantic symphony. Torn between fear and urgency, Jim grasped Lily's small hands tightly. I will give anything. Just let her go. The shadow seemed to grow, enveloping him and absorbing his words into the thick air. The crowd's murmurs turned to a haunting harmony as lanterns flickered ominously, casting shadows that danced across the faces of the entranced. Somewhere in the darkness, he felt the weight of Clara's gaze press upon him. You may lose her forever. Are you ready? Jim's pulse quickened. Was a bargain with the abyss worth the price? Overwhelming doubt clawed at his throat as he faced the abyssal darkness radiating from the figure. Each second felt like an eternity. But there was no time. An unseen clock ticked menacingly, closing in on them. Make a choice. The figure hissed, a hint of twisted glee in its tone. It reached out, fingers like tendrils of mist, grasping toward Jim, expanding, wrapping tighter around him, closing off his escape. He stood at the precipice, caught between unmeasurable dread and the pure love for his daughter. Just as the darkness was about to engulf him completely, a glimmer of hope surfaced. Maybe there was another way. Would Jim find the solution in time? Or would he condemn not just himself, but Lily as well? As the walls of shadow pressed closer, the choice loomed over him, dark and terrible, ready to swallow him whole. The shadows twisted, a sculptor molding darkness around Jim as he clutched Lily's hands tightly, feeling her small fingers tremble in his grip. The figure, now a breath away, towered with an aura of dread that threatened to crush him. The unseen pressure bore down on him, constricting his mind as doubt wormed through his thoughts like a relentless parasite. Your heart, the figure hissed, each word slashing through the heavy air. Jim's heart pounded like a tribal drum, each thump echoing a primal fight or flight instinct. He looked to Lily, her eyes wide with fright, reflecting a deep-seated terror that dug into his soul. Lily, he whispered, breathing in both fear and determination. We'll find a way. He could feel the crowd's eyes, cold and hungry, their hope feeding the pulse of the ominous chant swelling around him. This was wrong. Everything was wrong. Make the choice. The figure commanded again, its ethereal shadow creeping closer, narrowing the tangible world around them. Ripping his gaze from the darkness, Jim shot it back to the mass of haunted faces. What do you want from me? He bellowed, desperation slicing through his voice. The chanting faltered, a momentary lull as puzzled expressions flashed across the crowd. Back came the figure's response, dripping with insidious honey. You understand now, don't you? Only by giving of yourself can you save the child. What is life but a breath taken to barter with fate? An idea sparked in Jim's mind, igniting flickers of rebellion against the encroaching dread. Would the answer lie hidden in what they truly feared? The last echoes of Clara's warning rang in his ears, but he felt a rush of adrenaline clouding his decision-making. Take my sacrifice. He yelled, raising his voice above the fading chant, pulling out whatever strength he could muster. But not my heart. Let me give you something else. The figure paused, cloaked in unnatural silence, and the warped faces in the crowd leaned forward. Jim's heart raced at the shift, realizing he had drawn their collective interest. I can give you my memories. My regrets. Anything but my heart. With those words, the atmosphere crackled as if lightning had struck within the circle of watchers. The figure's eyes, where one would expect to see pupils, became two pinpricks of sickly light, narrowing with intrigue. Interesting, it purred, drawing back the mystery of its form as a serpent might coil in on itself. But this type of payment comes with grave consequences. I don't care. Jim shouted, defiance surging within him. I'll give you every dark moment I've ever had. Just let her go. The figure seemed to contemplate, its shadow expanding and contracting, a dark pulse disturbing the space around it. Its voice slithered through the air, a promise laced with peril. So be it. Step forward. Let your memories be unbound. Every soul behind him was frozen, entranced. Jim took a step, one beat at a time, as shadows peeled away from him, unveiling a path lined with flickering lights, memories he had thought forgotten, traumas resurrected. He could feel them pushing at the corners of his mind, clawing for release. With every step forward, fear gnawed at him, but the urge to save Lily surged through him like a mighty river's current. And then, moments before they connected, Clara's anguished cry sliced through the silence. Jim! Don't do it! But it was too late. The shadows surged, engulfing him as screams pierced the air. Reality twisted, warping around him, the sounds of the party fading, replaced by flashes of faces, laughter, pain, each haunting memory ready to bury him. Jim felt a cold slap of despair wash over him as the darkness began to pull him under. It was a slippery descent into something worse than oblivion. As he vanished deeper into the void of his own past, one bleeding thought bubbled to the surface. What of Lily? The shadows claimed him, but would they let her go? Would he have sacrificed his memories for nothing? What awaited him in that unseen realm, and could he return from the depths in time to save her? Jim was falling, spiraling into a chasm of his own making. Memories, long buried, crashed over him like waves, each one a jagged shard of reality, cutting deep. Faces from his past swirled around him, taunting, beckoning. Some smiled as they drifted past, but he could see the glimmers of anguish behind their eyes. His childhood home flashed bright, him standing in the yard, a place of laughter, yet overshadowed by a nagging feeling he couldn't shake. He caught a glimpse of his father, sunken shoulders and vacant eyes, the last moments of his life flashing like a slow-motion nightmare. For every good memory, there appeared a darker counterpart, a ghost pulling on the strings of his heart. Remember this? The figure's voice gnawed at his consciousness, wrapping around his thoughts. In the swirling darkness, Jim felt the thing pull at his memories. Images from the worst moments of his life surged forward: when he lost Clara, the rage of betrayal, and the hollow ache of abandonment. They pressed closer, desperate to wrench him from reality, to become part of its twisted tapestry. No. I want forget. He screamed, his voice lost in the endless void. He fought back against the memories, grasping for anything, a glimmer of hope, a lifeline. He couldn't let this thing take him completely. Suddenly, the pressure released, sending Jim tumbling into a new scene, one steeped in grief. It was the funeral, and the mourners loomed in dismal silence. He tried to reach out to Clara's grave, yearning for absolution, but hands held him back, faces he recognized distorting into grotesque masks of sorrow. Too late, they whispered, their voices merging into a symphony of regret. You made your choice. An icy grip clamped around his heart, an echo of the cost he might have to pay. The shadows loomed closer. An idea glimmered in the murky depths, a notion that maybe, just maybe, he could navigate through this hellish labyrinth. If he faced his memories head-on, could he destroy their hold? Show yourself. Jim shouted defiantly. I'm not afraid of my pain. The shadows momentarily recoiled. His surroundings shifted again, and he found himself in a darkened room filled with mirrors, each one reflecting a piece of himself, distorted and broken. He stepped closer to one, seeing a version of himself that had given up, the light dimming in his eyes. "That's not who I am," he roared, and the intensity of his declaration cracked through the silence that he swept through the others, seeking out the flickers of light that still remained. With each confrontation, he felt the weight lifting, some burdens falling away as doors in his mind began to close. But in the center, the figure awaited, its sickly eyes narrowing as it spoke, its voice dripping with malicious glee. "You think you can escape? Your heart is intertwined with all your choices and now you'll pay the price." Fear surged again. "What price?" The figure chuckled, the sound echoing through the realm, vibrating within Jim's soul. "Every memory safeguards a part of you. You lose them, you lose who you are." Determined, Jim held his ground. "Then I'll keep my heart. If I must face my past, I won't run from it." As the figure lunged forward, shadows roiling, Jim could sense the impending doom closing in, but something else tugged at him from afar, the faint whisper of Lily's presence flickering beneath the overwhelming darkness. "Lily!" he cried out, searching desperately for the bond they shared. His heart raced as visions of her smile flooded in pure, untainted, a beacon piercing the fog of despair. With renewed conviction, he broke into a sprint, chasing after the light, pushing through the haunting whispers. Would he reach her before it was too late? Would he find a way to defeat the shadow once and for all? The darkness hissed and drew back, sensing the threat of his focus on Lily. Behind him, the figure's voice rose, menacing and filled with rage. "You will not take what belongs to me." As Jim ran towards the light, unsure of the path ahead, he could feel the walls closing in around him. Would they claim him before he ever got the chance to save her? Just then, his foot caught on an unseen barrier, and he tumbled, the ground beneath him fracturing into shards of nothingness. Would he fall into the abyss or triumph in the face of his fears? The darkness beckoned, but so did the light. Jim's heart plummeted as he fell, tumbling through the blackness like a rag doll tossed into a storm. The air swirled around him, thick and suffocating, and he could feel the fingers of night clawing at his skin. Panic filled his lungs, he gasped, but nothing came in. He was suspended, plummeting with no end in sight. Then, suddenly, he landed hard on a cold, unyielding surface. Pain shot through him, radiating from his torso. Struggling to catch his breath, Jim sat up, bracing himself against the sting of the sharp floor beneath him. He blinked rapidly, forcing his eyes to adjust to the dim light. He was in a vast, empty room. The walls shimmered, flickering like restless flames, casting shadows that creeped along the floor. A guttural whisper echoed through the space. "Jim, you think you can escape?" Swallowing hard, Jim scrambled to his feet, scanning for any sign of that twisted figure. It felt close, lurking in the corners of his mind, guffawing at his desperation. "Where are you?" he shouted, fists clenched, trying to summon the remaining courage he had left, and there was a reflection, not in glass but in his fragmented memories, half-formed shadows that danced along the walls. Each one screamed at him, clawed at him, a desperate plea for acknowledgement. In their faces, he saw his failures and regrets. A surge of grief threatened to choke him. "No. I won't be trapped by you." But just as quickly as his resolve had surfaced, doubt seeped back in. The air felt colder. A terrible sensation skittered down his spine. "Remember your vows." The voice slithered around him, smooth as silk. "You were supposed to protect your loved ones." Clara's face emerged before him, a ghostly visage that tore at his heart. The memories pressed in, relentless, each one sharper than the last. He had watched her slip away, her eyes begging for salvation, for him to say something, do something. Instead, he froze, paralyzed by his own demons. As despair clawed at him, another light flickered in the distance. It was a shivering glow, familiar and warm. Lily's laughter echoed, a sound buried deep within him, an anchor in the chaos. "Jim! Please, I need you." Terror gripped him again, but this time, it was coupled with fierce hope. He moved toward the light, ignoring the slithering shadows that chanted his name, whispers growing shriller. You can't hide from the truth. The walls seemed to pulse with energy as he stepped closer, thinning between him and the warm glow. But a crushing weight fell upon him, wrapping around his throat like a noose, dragging him back into the clutches of darkness. The figure loomed larger now, towering over him, its skeletal fingers reaching out, almost tempting him. You can't resist the past, Jim. It's part of you and it will consume you. No. He stood firm, steeling himself against the tide of despair. Leave Lily out of this. The figure's face twisted in anger, revealing glistening, white teeth in a sinister grin. Your choices led her here too, Jim. She's tied to your fate and you'll both pay. Screams erupted from the shadows. Thousands of mournful cries that melded into one agonizing wail. Suddenly, Jim felt the ground shake beneath his feet. Pieces of shattered memories flew past him, splintered moments that threatened to swallow him whole. Yet, through it all, the light flickered stronger, drawing him in like a moth to a flame. But with every step he took, the figure lashed out, an unseen force tugging him back toward the dark abyss that lay lurking just beyond reality. Choose wisely, Jim, the voice echoed, the note of finality creeping in. Your past is the key to your future, but the cost will be steep. As his heart raced with the weight of impossible choices, that thin beam of light beckoned him more fiercely than ever. What would he risk to save Lily? What would he have to confront within himself? Just as he reached for the light, the shadows erupted around him, a terrifying whirlpool of sorrow and rage. Would he lose everything, or was this the moment to finally reclaim his soul? The figure loomed, malevolent. Laughter reverberating, drowning out his thoughts. And then, darkness consumed him again, but not before he caught a glimpse of a familiar smile, just out of reach. Had he waited too long? Would he ever escape the grasp of his own regrets? The darkness suffocated Jim, its weight pressing painfully against his chest as he struggled to regain his bearings. He blinked, fighting the encroaching haze, but it was as if night itself had wrapped around him like a shroud, leaving only flickering memories dancing at the edges of his consciousness. Wake up, Jim. The voice came again, sharper this time, dragging him further into awareness. In an instant, he found himself transported back to the room filled with shadows, his heartbeat thundering in his ears, reverberating off the walls. What do you want from me? He shouted into the void, desperate for the figure to reveal itself. Your torment is only beginning, it taunted, a laugh curling into the suffocating air, creating a chill that spread like wildfire across his skin. Shadows twisted, forming grotesque shapes that mirrored his worst nightmares, gripping his heart with icy fingers. The light, the warm, inviting glow flickered nearby, mere feet away but feeling insurmountably distant. For a fleeting moment, hope surged within him. But even as his feet moved forward, something deep inside him whispered doubts and fears, muttering his failures like a mantra. What had he sacrificed? Clara. His mind flashed back to moments lost, how her smile had faded, her laughter growing distant. Every step he took felt like a betrayal of her memory. The room warped, warbling like a distorted funhouse mirror, and he gasped as memories flooded his mind, blurring the line between past and present. Face it, Jim. If you want Lily, you must confront the truth. The figure's voice sliced through the images like a knife, sharp and insistent. What truth? He yelled, fists trembling. I'm ready to fight. But was he? The shadows lunged forward, wings of sorrow beating against him, pushing him back with every ounce of despair. Panic surged again, and he felt the ground slip beneath him. Just as he began to topple, the walls warped and stretched, a spiraling vortex swallowing the room whole. No. He fought against it and was yanked back toward the center, standing before a swirling mist that held a reflection of Clara, her eyes vibrant and alive. You have to make a choice, she whispered, her voice broken yet persistent. Jim stepped closer, reaching out to her, yet the flickering light seemed to dim. With every passing second, the figure loomed larger, casting a long shadow over Clara's image. Let her go, Jim. Choose the light or lose everything. The voice of the figure boomed, drowning Clara's pleas. Desperation clawed at his throat, the tug-of-war within him threatening to rip him apart. Clara, help me! He cried, his voice echoing off the walls. The figure's laughter rang through the air, mocking his desperation. They are traps of your making, Jim. Her love is but an illusion you cling to in fear of awakening. Before he could process, whips of darkness lashed out, coiling around him like rattlesnakes, pulling him further into the abyss. He felt himself slipping, the light becoming a pinprick in the growing chasm of despair. He grasped at the phantom memory of Lily's laughter, picturing her smile, her warmth. That fragile spark reignited courage within him. I choose to fight. He roared, wrenching free from the shadows, the very essence of his resolve igniting like a flame. Suddenly, the shadows recoiled, churning, shifting, revealing the contours of the room again, broken pieces of his past littering the floor. A realization dawned on him. The shadows were not just the embodiment of his fears, they held the key to his freedom. Each fragment of memory had to be faced, to be understood, before he could weave through the darkness and claim the light anew. He took a deep breath, his heart a relentless drum, as the shadows hissed in disapproval. Before him lay the exit. The light was closer now, the warmth more palpable. But just as his fingers grazed its surface, a piercing scream erupted from the depths, one he recognized all too well. Jim! Lily's voice echoed, panicked and desperate, cutting like glass through the tension of the moment. Heart pounding, he turned toward the scream, the shadows swirling in response, anxious to envelop him again. Don't leave her. His pulse quickened, and in that instant, the gravity of his decision became painfully clear. Would he pursue the light or plunge back into the shadows to save Lily? The choice loomed over him, a treacherous abyss ready to swallow him whole. What lay waiting for him in the dark corners of his choice? Would he find salvation or face the nightmare head-on? The echo of Lily's cry reverberated in his mind as fear merged with an unyielding resolve. Time to choose, he murmured, heart racing as the shadows whispered their dark promises around him once again. Jim hesitated, frozen in that terrible moment. The specter of Lily's fear tugged at his heart, that fragile thread pulling him back from the grasp of the shadows. Sweat trickled down his back as his body screamed for him to act. He couldn't abandon her. Not again. Jim! Her voice cut through the fog of shadows, sharp like shattered glass. Help me! The darkness writhed around him, eager to reclaim its hold. Shadows snaked toward him, brushing against his skin like icy fingers. Choose wisely, the figure sneered, watching with a twisted grin that made his stomach churn. The light is a deception. It has always been. No. Jim shouted, determination flaring in his chest. He turned away from the light. Each step he took toward Lily's voice felt like stepping into a pit of fire, the air heavy with desperation and dread. The shadows hissed, retreating for just a moment, but the figure remained, its laughter echoing up the walls. You cannot escape what you are, Jim. You are bound by your failures. As he plunged deeper into the darkness, the memories surged. Clara, her laughter fading away as fear sank its claws into her spirit. He could see her face twisting in agony, a haunting reminder of everything he had lost. But behind that pain, there was Lily, her light flickering yet somehow persistent, piercing through the choking shadows of his mind. Hold on, Lily! He yelled, pushing forward, the claustrophobia of despair closing in. The world around him morphed, twisting between a vivid nightmare and longing clarity as visions danced in chaos. The walls shifted, stretched thin like fragile paper, revealing vague outlines of past joys and stark tragedies. Suddenly, he was jolted into a different scene, a memory resurfacing. A day in the park, Lily chasing butterflies, her laughter like music weaving its way through the despair. Jim, look! Catch me if you can. The vision coiled around him, tugging his heartstrings. Lily! He called, each syllable dripping with urgency. Stay with me. There was a moment the veil thinned, allowing him a glimpse of her. He saw fear in her eyes, desperation as shadows clawed at her edges, clawing for purchase. The realization crashed over him like a tidal wave. She was trapped in her own darkness, waiting for him to find her. With resolve raging inside him, he shouted into the abyss, "I'll save you." Pushing through the dense fog, he refused to falter. He had to connect with her soul, cut through the veil suffocating her. Suddenly, hands reached out from the pinpricks of light scattered like stars. Shadows clawed at them but receded slightly in the face of his unwavering will. The figure screeched, its form distorting in rage. "You think you can protect her? You are too weak." In that same instant, a rush of warmth enveloped him. A fleeting sensation of hope flashed ahead, its glow illuminating a path. He surged forward through the thick darkness, reaching out, desperate for contact. The moment their fingers brushed, everything changed. Light exploded, pushing away the oppressive shadows. A wave of warmth rolled over him, igniting his spirit, pulling him into a vibrant glow filled with laughter and love. But just as he drew closer, the shadows screamed. They pulled back, roiling in an agonizing rage, manifesting images that tore at his heart. Clara, frightened and alone. "Jim! You have to." Lily's words were cut off, swallowed by a sinister wind. The figure from the shadows re-emerged, angrier than before, its swirling form unfurling to reveal a monstrous visage. "You can't escape the price of love, Jim. You'll lose everything." He was torn between the vibrant glow of Lily's warmth and the chaotic shadows clawing at his memories, the depth of love and loss merging into a cacophony inside him. What price was he willing to pay? He drew a deep breath, clutching onto the fleeting warmth, ready to face the darkness. But the shadowy figure lurked closer now, anger and despair mixing into an insatiable hunger. "Time is run, dare to choose." It taunted, its voice dripping with malice. As Jim's heart raced, he realized only one thing: he had to make the choice. Lily's safety or Clara's memory. Either way, someone would pay the price. The darkness surged towards him, ready to consume everything he had left. Was he strong enough to face the truth? The question echoed eerily in the shadows, lingering like smoke on a cold night. He steeled himself. "I will not be a prisoner of my past." But just as he stepped forward, the shadows lunged again. Jim felt the cold tendrils of darkness wrap around his body, squeezing, suffocating him with all the regret he had buried. He knew that stepping forward could either mean salvation or destruction. The cold, mocking laugh of the shadowy figure echoed in his ears, urging him to give in to despair. Suddenly, a surge of renewed desperation filled him. "Lily!" He shouted again, louder this time. He had to break through the veil of nightmares wrapping around him and reach the light of her spirit. His heart thumped against his ribcage, a drumbeat of fear and hope battling for dominance. The shadows shrieked, a sound that resonated deep within his bones, but his voice cut through the cacophony. "I will not let you take her." The darkness screamed back, the entity shifting and swirling, its monstrous form pulsating like a living organism. "You're too late, Jim. You always have been." With each step he took, the floor beneath him felt unstable, as if he were walking atop a churning sea of darkness ready to swallow him whole. The grip of the shadows tightened around his ankles, clawing at him, dragging him down. But he clawed back. He refused to drown. "Let her go." The words exploded from his lips, fueled by every ounce of love he felt for Lily. He pushed through the pain memories of their joyful beach days, the sound of her laughter cutting through his dark thoughts, giving him strength. "Hear me, Lily." His breath hitched, but he pressed on. "I'm coming for you." In that moment, a beam of bright light exploded in the center of the storm. It cut through the shadows like a knife, illuminating the space around him. The figure recoiled, its malevolent gaze darting around, clearly shaken by the sudden burst of brightness. "Fool!" It spat, fury weaving through its voice. "You think the light can save you? It will shatter, and when it does, it will consume you both." Ignoring the threat, Jim closed his eyes. He focused on that warm glow, the memory of laughter echoing in his mind. Pulling in a deep breath, he opened his eyes and ran toward the light. Desperation fueled his every movement, and the shadows writhed in fury, anguished wails clawing at his ears. Lily's voice pierced through the darkness once more. "Jim! Please!" He reached out, hand stretching toward the glowing sphere, heart pounding against his chest, desperate to grasp it. The warmth felt so close. He could almost feel her essence flooding back into him, a lifeline he had long thought severed. In that split second, the shadows shrieked, a furious gale sweeping through, forcing him backward. The light flickered and danced, struggling against the storm, yet he could see the outline of Lily's figure beyond the darkness. She was there, her body fading in and out like a candle's flame flickering against the wind. "Trust me." Her voice broke through the despair, crystal clear amid the noise. Without thinking, Jim focused on her voice, pushing with all his strength. The shadows clawed at him like ravenous animals, gnashing teeth and grasping claws, but he was driven by a singular purpose. Then, in an explosion of light and sound, he felt it. The connection snapped into place, a thread taut between them. He thought of all the times he had failed, all the moments he had let fear hold him back, but that thread was more powerful. It vibrated with the energy of pure love, igniting fire within him. "Jim!" Lily screamed, her figure becoming clearer as the shadows shrank back, hissing and writhing. Then everything changed. The light surged, blasting forth like a tidal wave. It rolled over the shadows, burning them away. As the darkness receded, he felt a warmth envelop him, pulling him closer to Lily. He could see her face now, wide eyes, filled with hope, just a heartbeat away. But then, the shadows erupted, expanding with a fury, tentacles of darkness striking at the light, trying to pull it down, to extinguish it. "You cannot escape." The figure screamed, its form losing cohesion. Jim's heart raced as he wrestled with the resurrection of his fears. Could he truly save Lily? Was the price for love too high? As he pulled her closer, the darkness swelled. A chilling voice whispered, promising there would be a cost. And then, out of the maelstrom, came a final choice. With darkness clawing at his back, Jim's heart felt like it would burst right through his chest. Desperation fueled every pulse, every breath, every step he took toward the radiant light of Lily's presence. She was there, shimmering and almost luminous, but the shadows writhed and lashed out around them, threatening to swallow them whole. "Trust me." Her voice rang clear, piercing through the shroud of panic that enveloped him. It was the call of hope, and with it came a sudden surge of strength. "Hold on, Lily. I want to let you go," Jim shouted, locking his gaze onto her. He would not become yet another ghost of unfulfilled promises and shattered dreams. Together, they could shatter the despair that sought to consume them. He pushed forward, feeling the fire of connection ignite between them. The light pulsed warmly, slowly pushing against the darkness, illuminating his path as shadows screeched and recoiled. He could feel it, the fractured memories were merging, fighting back, but with every breath he took, the warmth expanded. Armed with the love he had for her, Jim surged onward. Then, suddenly, the darkness lunged, a final desperate strike. The figure roared, a furious whirlwind of rage embodied. "You cannot escape your fate," it bellowed. "Watch me." Jim countered, every ounce of his being focused on the bright light enveloping Lily. It flickered, wavered, but did not dim. Instead, he felt it grow stronger. Together. In that split moment, he and Lily connected. The light exploded outward, filling the room with blinding brilliance, pushing back the dark tendrils that clawed at them. The figure screamed, a cacophony of anger spiraling into nothingness as the shadows began to dissolve with shocking speed, disintegrating into particles of despair that could no longer engulf them. As the darkness retreated, the ship trembled beneath them. Jim felt the deck shake but remained steady, holding onto Lily's hand tightly. He could sense a shift in the atmosphere around them, a frail yet hopeful calm settling in. "Daddy!" Lily cried, her eyes wide, tears shimmering against her cheeks. She stepped closer, both of them now standing rooted in the warm brightness, free from the grasp of fear's claws. I'm here. I've got you, Jim replied, his voice thick with emotion, relief flooding him. The weight of past regrets, doubts, and fears began to lift, swirling away with the last remnants of shadow. He looked around, seeing the faces of passengers returning from their stupor, confusion etched on their features, finally waking from horror-esque grip. Then, from behind, Clara emerged, looking solemn yet relieved. You did it, Jim, her voice carried an eerie echo, an acknowledgement. What about the spirits? They're gone. He murmured, a tremor in his voice, his heart still racing. Their price was paid, Clara replied. You faced the darkness, and in doing so, you set them free. They were merely tied to your trauma. Jim felt a wave of affection wash over him, the realization that he had not just fought for Lily but freed himself from his own demons. But what about us? He asked, unsure of what came next. With a faint smile, Clara whispered, sometimes the past must be faced to secure the future. Your love is stronger than fear. You've learned that today. As twilight settled over the SS Liberty, the ship became a terrace of renewal, free from its haunted past. Laughter rippled through the crowd as clarity returned. Jim glanced at Lily, who beamed up at him, her innocence restored. Let us go home, he whispered, pulling her into an embrace, a firm promise in his heart as they stepped away from the shadows and into the dawn of a new day. And so, as the SS Liberty sailed toward brighter horizons, a collective wave of hope washed over the once polluted deck, a tapestry woven not just of memories but of resilience, love, and the strength found in familial bonds. As the sun dipped below the waves, casting golden light across the water, it marked a turning point, a deeper understanding of sacrifice, the power of love, and the triumph over darkness that lingered just a heartbeat away. But you don't have to just take my word for it. This is the moment to show your support. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss our next exclusive stories, filled with the wonders and terrors of the unimaginable. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and spread the word. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. Your voice matters, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. United, we can conquer the dark and share the light.